Let's go back to the conversation on Asian Paints because it is an interesting stock. It's down in trade today as well.
Right, absolutely. And, we spoke to the management as to, what kind of competitive intensity is playing out, how demand is playing out. And Amit Syngle, who's the MD and CEO, has given all of those insights in the conversation that we had with him. So listen in to a chunk of that.
So overall, we see that, there are a lot of factors which are kind of playing as far as we look at Q2. First of all, the consumer sentiment has been very low. We have been seeing it low across the industry. So whether it is the consumer sector, whether it is the construction segment, I think overall we are seeing definitely a lot of weakness in terms of the market, in terms of consumer demand. We've also seen unseasonal or undistributed rainfalls with some floods and other things happening in August, which kind of really affected both the retail and the institutional projects market to that extent. And in September, we didn't see the whole surge which we would have seen because of a shorter Diwali to that extent. And that is something which also impacted the September sales. It was only July, which was a spark, which we saw good numbers kind of coming in the month of July. And in addition, not only this, to kind of really look at when the demand conditions are low, the competition gets fairly aggressive. And we have seen definitely a lot of existing competition really getting aggressive in the market to that extent. I would not say that some of the new competition has really made, a very big impact, while I think some of them are really trying to reach out to the country and look at possibly representing the country at various pockets and regions and so on and so forth. But the larger intensity has come in from the existing competition in terms of what we see. And I am a firm believer of the fact that sometimes when the consumer sentiment is low, demand conditions are challenging, the brand with the highest share possibly gets impacted a little more. And that is something which we have seen in combination of these factors.
I would have also thought, Mr. Syngle, that the brand with the highest brand recall, and unequivocally it has to be Asian Paints, would weather the storm a lot better. So now my question to you is two-pronged, sir. Would you believe that, and your margin guidance is strong, but your commentary around October and the demand challenge also stands out. So I would love to know, how do you see the next 6 months? And I'm guessing it's difficult to predict beyond 6 months because it's a very volatile environment, or not volatile, but a fairly fast changing environment currently. How do you see the next 6 months, sir? If the government spend comes back, sure, you will maintain the margins and you will clock in whatever 18.5 as an average, and which means 20% for the second half. But what about demand, sir? Do you reckon that can come back if government spends come back? Because consumer sentiment, as you said, isn't quite the strongest. So will it need the crutch of the government spend, or can it happen even otherwise?
So overall, currently the signals are a little bit still mixed in terms of the consumer sentiment. In terms of, say, we are looking forward to a stronger wedding season. We have had good rainfalls, monsoons have been good, which could kind of give a surge in terms of the rural demand in terms of going forward. But I think at the same time, in the urban centers, we are seeing a weakness as compared to the rural centers, and that is something we are not seeing a rejuvenation happening immediately very strongly, and this is something possibly true for the entire industry as well to that extent. So I think, the project segment, which is, almost about 15 to 20% of our business, the government spending on infrastructure development products could be a big surge in terms of what we could get. Even I think some surge in terms of the construction activities could get the builder segment and the construction segment up to that extent in terms of going. But the fact is that unless the core retail in the market goes up, the consumer demand goes up, that should not be enough to kind of really revitalize the second half very, very strongly. So we are really hoping that the demand is something which possibly consistently picks up as we go on to Q4 to that extent. And that is why an element of caution in terms of what we are exercising in terms of looking at the second half of the year.
Mr. Syngle, I want to understand that, there are some pockets where you've taken price hikes and there are some pockets where you've given rebates as well. So overall, by the end of FY25, how do you expect this to affect your top line? And what's the kind of guidance then, if it impacts your top line overall, what's the kind of guidance that you'll give for your overall top line as well as bottom line?
So if you look at, we've taken almost about a 1.4% to 1.5% increase in quarter two, and the entire realization of that increase would come in quarter three as we kind of see it going forward. We've also looked at possibly, giving a higher rebating, discounting, and spending overall with respect to our marketing expenses in terms of going forward, which we think very strongly that we are looking at a push and a pull kind of combination in terms of balancing out the growth as we want to kind of go ahead. And that is something which possibly could kind of really give the top line a surge in terms of going forward, given the initiatives in terms of what we are rolling out. The overall area with respect to pricing, what we have to see is that we have to watch out for the volatility which is happening in the market very clearly, because the geopolitical situation is still not very good to that extent, and therefore any pricing changes would possibly depend in terms of the stability in terms of what we would see in terms of crude prices going ahead to that extent. However, given all this, we are looking at possibly single digit volume growth for the entire year in terms of what is there, and for the second half as well. At H1 we are sitting at almost about 3.5% volume growth, and therefore we would like to kind of really kind of deliver, a single digit volume growth, which comes in the decorative business, and possibly a higher growth in the industrial segments as we see.
So, just a clarification, the single digit would be higher than 5%, or is it difficult to call that right now? For the year?
So it's difficult to say, because I think quarter three is still very, very challenging in terms of looking at it. So we would not like to qualify in terms of which side it is, but definitely single digit is something what we are looking at, given the fact that we are sitting at 3.5% in H1.
Just one more question from mine, Mr. Syngle, on competition. I heard you say that it's not necessarily the newer competitor that has done well, but the existing competitors or the existing players which have come in and also tinkered with pricing or discounting, what have you. There is also talk of a global player maybe exiting. Maybe you are in the fray, maybe you are not. Maybe others are in the fray, maybe the others are not. My question is really whether you have to pay top dollar for it or somebody else takes it and also enhances the competitive intensity. How do you look at the cycle, sir? Do you reckon that the next 6 months to the next 12 months, the competitive intensity will continue to stay high, or is this a short-lived phenomenon? Is it possible to predict this?
See, my belief is that, when the demand conditions are stretched, the overall market is not growing, the competitive intensity would remain. And therefore, I am seeing that for the next 6 months also the competitive intensity would remain, irrespective of the fact that whether there is more consolidation in the industry we see, or in terms of new competition, in terms of doing various things in the market to that extent. So I think we are in times where possibly we will see a lot of action from existing players and as well as the new players to that extent. And any consolidation which it happens because of any exit of an existing player possibly will have to be seen in terms of which player tends to kind of get into to that extent. But I think it is quite normal that consolidation will definitely occur in terms of going forward to that extent.
Right, Mr. Syngle, this was actually my next question. You actually talked about consolidation. We're seeing a lot of consolidation in the cement industry, and in the paint industry also. Now that there are a lot of players, there were media reports suggesting that you are planning to acquire AkzoNobel. Is there any update with respect to that, or is there anything, any greenfield or brownfield expansions that you're looking at present to maybe expand your portfolio in terms of the coating side of things? Or anything of that sorts on the cards?
So overall, when we look at, right now the options are not very clear in terms of how how this company is looking at in terms of looking at whether it is a joint venture, whether it is a divestment, whether it is a partial sellout. We are not, we are waiting for still the options to come out. There is no clarity as of now. They've just said that they're looking at a strategic review of their India business, and possibly I think the situation can get very clear only once the options come out in terms of what they're looking at, because we will have to weigh in terms of the whole area of legality as well, in terms of what is really involved in terms of seeing it to that extent. That is one. Second, on our own, we have kind of really completed all our brownfield expansions in terms of our capacity overall, and we have kind of strongly forged our capacity ahead in terms of the coatings business overall. We have also looked at a slew of backward integration projects in terms of what is there. We have a cement plant, white cement plant, which is coming in Fujairah in Dubai, and that should be operational by March, April of next year. We also have a VAM VAE, which is a new age emulsion, which goes into the paints, which is the heart of the paint to that extent, and that is something which we have kicked off in Dahej in Gujarat to that extent. It will take another 2.5 years to kind of come to its fruition to that extent. But these are big, strong projects in terms of what we have taken in terms of really looking at adding value to our core business as we kind of go ahead.
Right. Mr. Syngle, just for clarification, you said that, AkzoNobel is still considering the options that it will put on table. But just from your end, will you be considering, being a part of that race of acquiring AkzoNobel? If the options, of course, are in favor of what you want to have.
So see, as I said, unless the options are very clear, because we do not know that whether it is part one business or part other business they are looking at, or they are looking at any other way of alignment. We need to be cautious in terms of the fact that unless the options are very, very clear, and if the options come in.